Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the feedback session of the Forestry Skills Audit. It's brought to you by the Forestry Value Chain Forum and, of course, in partnership with the FP&M Seta. And we've got Olga Bezuidenhout, who's representing the Forestry Value Chain Forum. And then we have Thandokazi Mzabalazo from Mzabalazo Advisory Services. So I'm going to hand over to Olga to give us a brief welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Olga Bezuidenhout. I'll be representing the Forestry Value Chain Forum today. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time and taking part of this initiative. The Forestry Value Chain Forum is very happy today to be partnering with the FP&M Seta to bring you the Skills Audit Feedback Report. It was one of the initiatives that was brought forth by the Forestry Masterplan. For those of you who might not be aware, the Forestry Value Chain Forum is a collaboration pre-competitive platform between Forestry South Africa, the Paper Manufacturers Association, Sawmilling South Africa, and then the South African Wood Preservers Association. As many of you are aware, today there are many challenges and limited resources. So it's more important than ever for us to see identified areas where we can collaborate and to use our resources to the fullest to make the most meaningful impact at the end of the day. So what we did last year is we said, because of all these different challenges and how to identify them better, we decided to communicate better with each other in the different associations within this forestry value chain. And what we did is we created a database to make sure that all the information within these 4 different sectors is distributed through a communications tool that is run by Samantha, who's hosting our webinar today. So if any of you are not part of the database and you would like to be, please just let us know in the chat box so that we can add you to the database. We just need your email address. And then moving on to the next thing why we're here today is, before we continue, let me just say that thank you to Forestry South Africa to providing us for the following stats that I think is very, very meaningful to what we are doing today as well. Is South Africa forestry industry is a multi-billion rand industry responsible for 9.8% of the country's agricultural GDP and 4.9% of South Africa's manufacturing GDP. Our export value is 38.4 billion rand, over 38.4 billion rand. So it's not just a key contributor to the South African economy, but it's also a massive employer with supporting over 500,000 of South Africans. I think these stats speak for themselves, what the importance is of looking after these sectors and with working together and collaborating so that we can get the best results. Out of these sectors, there's such a good story to tell. From the trees that we use is farming trees. So the same principles as farming, that you would do fruits and vegetables, we farm trees. So all these stories, and even in our South African textbooks, when we read things about deforestation, it's simply not true. So it's also so important to work together to get the right message out there. If we talk about the good environmental story linked to it, about carbon dioxide being captured into trees, and then when they are processed, staying captured into the follow-up products and only being released if they're burnt, there's so many positive things that we can focus on and look on into these various sectors. If we looked in the past almost 10 to 15 years that I've worked in the industry, the good that these various different associations, individual companies has done, linked to alleviating poverty, to working with rural communities, to uplift skills. There's so many good stories and there's so many things that we need to highlight coming from there. I feel proud, I truly do, to be part of this value chain and for all the good that it's doing at the moment for everybody and South Africa as a whole. So without further ado, I will hand so once again, welcome, and I will hand it back to Samantha to introduce our next speaker to us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Great message about our sector and the important role that it plays in everyday life and also our environment and our economy and society. So Thandokazi Mzabalazo is part of the team that conducted the research, and I'm going to hand over to her for her presentation, and she'll take us through the feedback from the skills audit.
Thank you, Samantha, and thank you, Olga, for that introduction. My name is Thandokazi Mhlongo, and I work for Mzabalazo Advisory Services. We are a research company We specialize or mostly do research related to skills, training, development. Some of the work that we do are SSPs for various Setas, monitoring and evaluation studies. We have a close relationship with the FP&M Seta. Just to name a few, or to introduce the company that has done this research study. I'm going to share my screen and begin. I'd like to say that I will be delivering the presentation. However, there were various people that helped with this research. My colleague, Fadwa, who's also present. I don't know, Fadwa, would you like to introduce yourself briefly before I begin?
All right, so my name is Fadwa Friedrichs, and I'm also a researcher at the organization called Umzabalazo Advisory Services. Yes, I worked with Tandokazi on this skills audit, and some of you in the audience today might be familiar with us because we have engaged with you during the research process for the audit. I just want to add that there is another one of our colleagues, Mr. Matungwe Chidi, in the audience as well. But yeah, over to you. Back to you, Tandokazi. Thank you.
Thank you. So this study is focusing on, or has a focus on, a skills needs assessment and analysis for the forestry sector. You may realize that some of the information that we have is based on a certain period. Yes, since we began the study, I think it was about almost a year ago. But I think all the findings are still very much relevant, and so are the challenges and the solutions that the team has proposed. In this presentation, I will go over the purpose and objectives of the research study, the research processes that we've taken, the background of the study, our research findings, as well as our recommendations. In terms of the purpose and objectives of the study is intended to provide a skills audit within the forestry sector to support the implementation of the Forestry Sector Masterplan. And so it's emphasized that in the master plan, it's emphasized that a skills audit was needed to be done in order to determine skills gaps and redundant skills on processing and production forestry. Getting into our objectives, the first one being to identify the skills implications of the Forestry Masterplan, to conduct a skills audit for the forestry sector to enhance growth and sustainability, to identify emerging occupations based on increased automation and the use of technology, to identify which occupations are becoming redundant and which ones are becoming relevant, to conduct an international benchmarking of the forestry sector, and lastly, to identify whether training interventions need to be updated, adapted, or changed to respond to skills needs. In terms of our research process, this is what we have done. We've started off with a desktop research, which is it includes a deep dive into the assessment of the forestry sectors, the forestry sector's economic and labor market performance, change drivers, the research and development, emerging occupations, and also training and development approaches within the sector. We've also conducted interviews that have totaled to 43, and that included conversations with employers, trade unions, forestry associations, government, education and training providers. We've also sent out a survey where employers of different sizes responded. A total of 67 employers responded to the survey, but a great or majority of the respondents were small-sized employers, creating a 38% of the responders, followed by medium-sized employers, creating a 19% of our responders, closely followed by very large and micro-sized employers. I'll now get into the background of the study. And as stated before, this project is a deliverable of the master plan. So the master plan is the backbone of the study. The Forestry Masterplan is a 5-year industrial strategy developed by a social compact to increase investment, create job opportunities, and improve competitiveness. And at the time, the target was 100,549 additional jobs. And this would almost increase to 68% of the forestry sector labor force. The master plan also has a number of focus areas. And basically, these focus areas center around some of the key challenges facing the South African forestry sector. And in the master plan, these challenges are highlighted and solutions are proposed to specific skills development. The first focus area includes an expansion of primary resources, maintenance, as well as protection, which highlights the reduction in land available for production and the need to return currently unproductive plantation land back to production. The second focus area is transformation and labor issues, which highlights the need to improve productive Black and rural participation. The third being processing, which highlights the need for increased use of timber and engineered timber products in South African built environment, as well as remaining competitive in the international market. Illegal timber and crime-related activities. This focus area has a suggestion or has a solution to appoint forestry officers to help with this these crime-related activities within the sector. There's also research, development, and innovation, as well as skills, human resource development as well, which touch on a number of things, including the retention of high-level managerial and research skills within the country, clear career paths and training programs for lesser skilled workers to fill higher level positions, technical, entrepreneurial, and financial skills development to address a critical skills shortage amongst the landowners in the primary sector and amongst small sawmillers. And lastly, highlighting the training built environment professionals in support of promoting a wood culture. I will then get into our research findings. We started off by analyzing some of the stats where we looked into stats SA data between the period of 2019 to 2023. We've analyzed a forestry sector employment in both primary forestry and secondary forestry. So we'll start off by analyzing primary forestry between this period of 2019 to 2023, which includes logging and related services subsector and forestry and related services. As you can see, the change in the number of employees in the sector over this period is quite volatile. We start off in 2019, in the first quarter, with just over 61,810 employees, and then there's a decrease in 2020 in the first quarter, and then gradually this recovers, but also has a few decreases. But ultimately, in 2023, in the second quarter, we have a total of 74,245 employees in the primary forestry. And then when you look at employment in secondary forestry, which includes sawmilling, planning of wood, manufacturing of wood products, paper and paper product subsector, we can see that the employment trend is much more stable in comparison to the primary forestry sector. So we start off in 2019, the first quarter, with just over 90,000 employees, and then in 2023, in the second quarter, there then is a decline from the 2019 figures. But gradually, when you look at both these figures, or when you combine these figures in employment for both primary and secondary forestry, it may seem a bit stable when you look at the graph at the bottom. We've also looked at transformation in employment. On your left, you'll see a graph showing male to female employees in the sector. The male make up 70, well, not 70, but they make up a higher number of employees within the sector compared to females, which is quite lower, significantly lower when you see these graph lines. And in 2023, in the first quarter, 71% of the total number of employed, both in primary and secondary forestry sector, were male. We've also looked at racial employment. So Black and African individuals consistently make up the highest percentage of employees in the sector over this period between 2019 to 2023. We've also looked at age, and in terms of age, employees in the sector are predominantly aged between 25 to 44 years of age, with much smaller proportions between the ages of 15 to 24 years old, as well as 55 years old and the older age group thereafter. The next phase of our research findings is informed by interviews and surveys that were sent out to employees in the sector and other stakeholders that we interviewed. We've asked employers a number of questions, and one of them being their assessment of employment in different occupational levels. So starting off with the lower level occupations, we've asked them about their assessment. We've asked employers about their assessment of employment within lower level occupations. And when we look at all these four pie charts, we can straight on see that a very large employers stated that employment has declined. So 75% of this of these employers state that it has significantly declined. And some of the reasons that we may attribute this to is that, according to stakeholders in the sector that we have interviewed, outsourcing of work in the sector is increasing, and this impacts employment, specifically for lower level occupations, because more and more contractors are being used in the sector, and it is impacting lower level occupations as contractors are being used in the sector, and many of the large companies do not employ workers with lower level skills because they outsource these operations to contractors. And if you look at the other results that we have, micro employers, 100% of the respondents stated that employment in the lower level occupations remained stable. I'll then move on to middle and higher level occupations, but starting off with middle level occupations, we can see that majority of the very large and small-sized employers have stated that employment in this level has increased. And in our interviews, it came this information came to us in discussion where stakeholders stated that more machine operators are needed in the sector, and so more of the workers who previously worked in lower level occupations are being upskilled to operate machines, thereby increasing employment in the middle level occupations when they do get those roles. Others have stated that mechanization is reducing employment in this category as smaller teams are needed to get a specific task or job done. On your right, there is higher level occupations and its employees' assessments of the employment within this category. Now, a number of organizations have maintained that employment at this level has remained stable, but there is a need for a slight change in skill set. This was stated by the stakeholders that we've interviewed. They gave an example stating that a manager now must be able to manage in a more modernized and mechanized environment, as the sector is leaning towards that way, maybe not now, but certainly in the future. We've also asked questions on occupations in high demand, emerging and redundant occupations. And so we've broken these down into different level of occupations, starting off with professionals and managers in OFO codes 1 and 2. What we got back is that occupations in high demand for this level of occupation includes forestry researchers, forestry planners, forest fire specialists, community engagement specialists were highlighted, as well as they're now needing people who understand the socio-political environment of small growers or small landowners, those people that contribute into the forestry sector. Also occupational health and safety officers, tree breeders, amongst others. And then moving on to OFO codes 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Those are the technicians or operators that fall in the middle level occupations, which include foresters being in high demand, artisans, saw doctors, machine operators, treatment plant operator, forestry technicians, amongst others. And for elementary occupations, which is OFO code 8, there were no occupations that were identified as occupations that are high in demand. It is stated that some occupations have significantly declined in employment, but it does not necessarily mean that they have become redundant. And these include occupations like general forestry workers, debarkers, chainsaw operators, slashers, pruners, lorry drivers, data processing clerks, just to name a few. Most have stated that there are no new and emerging occupations, but rather the nature of jobs is changing. So to keep up with the changes in technology that have been introduced in the sector. There's also an increasing need for some existing occupations in the sector, and these include drone pilots, data scientists and analysts, engineers, biotechnicians, remote sensor technicians, amongst others. Community landowners, SMMEs, small growers, all make up a very important group of producers within the forestry sector. And in the master plan, focus area number 2 basically highlights this and states that there is a need to bolster transformation of the sector by way of increasing community ownership and expanding community and Black business opportunities throughout the sector with improved commercial viability. The plan also notes that technical, entrepreneurial, financial skills are needed in the sector amongst landowners and small sawmillers. So similar skills when we interviewed stakeholders, similar skills were highlighted or were noted, including amongst small-scale growers and SMEs. They stated that business skills and general forestry skills are a need. And according to the Department of Forestry and other stakeholders, they highlighted business management coupled with financial management skills as well as technical skills were very important. So knowing when to prune, when to weed, spray pesticide, and when to harvest were very important things to know within the process. Others also noted nursery management skills, so how to develop seedlings, and other soft skills that were mentioned, communication skills, supervision skills, fire protection skills, basic literacy, and numeracy skills remained very important as one of the skills needed. We also asked our employees and stakeholders on the impact of mechanization within the sector. And many in the forestry sector maintain that the adaptation of mechanization and technology within the sector is quite inevitable. Currently, the uptake of new machinery and equipment as well as new technologies in South Africa is not widespread. And we then asked in our survey, we then asked employers, is mechanization displacing labor at your company? And you'll see on the graph on your left, a great majority of them, 84% of them, stated that no, mechanization is not displacing labor at their companies. And when we broke these answers down into the different sizes of the kind of employers that answered, you can see that a great majority of them, those that have answered no, include medium-sized, small, and micro-sized employers. And those that have answered yes to the question mainly comes from large sized employers that have stated that mechanization is displacing labor. And you will see that on the graph on the right shows a 67% of large sized employers stating that mechanization is displacing labor at their organization. And we've further then asked them to provide answers on which occupations are being displaced by laborers or likely to be displaced, which occupations are likely to be displaced due to mechanization. And these include chemical sprayer, planter, general forestry worker, logging assistant, pruner, chainsaw operator, data processing clerk, just to name a few. In terms of scale of education and training, the forestry and wood product sector is very rich with registered qualifications and skills programs, and these are delivered through several private as well as public education and training providers using different routes. We've also asked which education and training interventions do companies use to address scarce skills. 54% of them stated that they use informal mentoring. Highly highly included was also short courses as well as work integrated learning. We also looked at enrollments and completions in forestry-related programs between the years 2019 to 2022. And as you can see, these are the figures of the people that have entered or enrolled within forestry-related programs, as well as those that have completed the forestry-related programs. I'll now get into our recommendations. The first part of our recommendations has to do with strategy alignment. So this strategy alignment focuses on skills development to support the master plan implementation. And one of the recommendations basically states that education and training programs need to be designed in a manner that enables small and micro companies to participate. And so during our research, our interviews, we found that some employees do not have access to education and training. There were a number of reasons that were cited. But though that does not, it is not really encouraged for those reasons to be a focus or the one true reason as to why education and training programs shouldn't take place amongst employees in the sector. And so the contracting of work must not be a reason for not training, because previously I did speak about how contracting is becoming an increasing phenomenon within the sector. Training should also be linked to other forms of support to small enterprises provided as part of extension services. We also found out that some employees are employed by employers who do not have the luxury of sending employees on training while maintaining productivity. Some of them are located in remote locations with no infrastructure and no connectivity. And those are the two most important things needed in order to facilitate education and training within the sector. Also, what was another concern amongst stakeholders was some of the employees have low levels of literacy, which greatly impacts how training or how frequently there is training within the sector. Development planning need to be done along supply chains of larger companies. Now, there's a great emphasis on the importance of new, small, and micro community-based and emerging businesses on the master plan, the Forestry Masterplan, and so an up-to-date skills development program should be put into place to enable all suppliers, no matter the size, all suppliers of goods and services to engage in skills development. And the reason, or one of the reasons as to why there's an emphasis on all new, small, micro, community-based or emerging businesses is that most of these organizations or these smaller sized organizations that have employees are the ones that will maintain job creation within the sector, as you'll find that large or very large companies within the sector are have stated that mechanization is displacing labor, so they won't be needing a lot of people in order to do a certain task, but it's not likely for new or smaller or micro or community-based businesses to think that way. Another recommendation focuses on local community-based planning to take place in areas targeted for afforestation, with the intention of appropriately skilled workers being available once planting starts. And lastly, on strategy alignment, funding needs to be available for programs to be delivered in local languages. Another aspect of our recommendations focus on skills interventions. The first one being creating career paths. It is suggested that 3 straightforward career paths need to be adopted. So one for elementary workers, one for people who are qualified in a matric or an equivalent qualification, and one for graduates. All these different career paths need to focus or should focus on training and qualifying people in order to move from one occupational level to the next one. Excuse me. And on your right, you'll see that we have created a table of the skills interventions for the different levels of occupation, starting from elementary or lower level occupations. We've set out an objective where we focused on what is needed or what this individual in this level of occupation needs to be competent in, just briefly, and then some of the interventions that can be used in order to facilitate these career paths. So we have learnerships that can be used as a tool to facilitate this career path, skills development programs, literacy and numeracy education programs, and so forth. And then we have other skills interventions or career paths for middle level artisans and technicians, which focuses on expanding skills in areas of need, expanding the number of artisan and other with level 4, as well as other qualifications. And you'd use RPL's skills development programs on critical skills, bursaries, learnerships, apprenticeship, and so forth, as well as higher level technical, professional and management positions that form higher level occupations. We also have the different objectives and interventions. However, when we spoke about career paths and how stakeholders think about these career paths, some stakeholders believe that these can be a bit unrealistic and they're quite doubtful because of the low levels of literacy and numeracy found, especially within elementary workers. So there would be a great a higher level of effort needed in order to execute these career paths. And also, we do emphasize that a career path must not be imposed upon an employee, but rather an employee must aspire to have a career path, and they should choose their own career path within their respective occupations. We also have stressed attention need to be given to training offered to elementary level workers. This should include ABIT programs to enable entry into programs to acquire higher level skills in order to progress to the next occupational level. And also, in addition to hard skills, there should be training offered in business skills for those forming enterprises, as not everyone wants to work for an employer, but some employees would like to have their own businesses one day. Other recommendations include a focus on structures and systems. It is suggested that the Forestry Masterplan Skills Committee set up a fund to develop and manage skills development projects across the sector and help put in place partnerships in localities to ensure provision of and access to training. Funding also remains a huge challenge. It is suggested that in light of the master plan commitments, employers consider raising funds that will have the specific purpose of the master plan implementation. This would enable the skills committee to also do work in the space, particularly in those areas not benefiting currently from the levy grant system. And lastly, communication and sector support. The sector should put into place a communication strategy on education and training programs required to implement the master plan. The strategy must take into account the challenges that are faced in many communities in accessing information via the internet due to a lack of connectivity or inability to afford data. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thandagazi. I think that was a very data-rich presentation, and I think there's a lot of detail and useful data that we can use as a sector to obviously implement various programs, and we thank you also for the team for your recommendations. Mike asks, looking at the themes coming through, the need for supervisors and managerial skills, is this coming through the data? Thando, are you able to answer that question?
I certainly think that based on our interviews and the survey that we sent out, yes, the answer would be yes. The interviewees stated that the type of environment that employees now find themselves in with changing technologies, different technical equipment that are being used in the workspace.
Olga, would you like to perhaps make some comments on the data that's been received and the results of this audit?
Okay, I think it is an important first step to take towards to what I mentioned earlier is with the Forestry Value Chain Forum. One of the big things we're focusing on this collaborative efforts is regarding skills. And I think this is a great step to start off with, because what we're looking at the end of the day, what we want to move forward, is we want to see a Forestry Value Chain Sector Skills Plan, that if you take the document, any one of our sectors, you can identify immediately what the skills needs are, what the trends are, what we should be trading, where should we be moving away from, and what we should be moving towards. So I think that the research they've done to now, have done a great job. First of all, not just to the service providers, to the FP&M Seta, and to the task team that was involved. I know everybody is very busy, so for taking the time in this initiative and actually contributing is much appreciated. And I think this is a great first stepping stone, because like I said, from the forum's perspective, our way that we're looking forward is to really put that a very impactful sector skills plan on a value chain perspective together, that everybody can use and incorporate, and that's up to date. So I think this is a good start for it. What I wanted to say, I think in South Africa at the moment, it is so important that you've got job creation, but it doesn't matter if we implement millions of jobs and we don't have the skills and experience to go hand in hand with that. And I think it's always when we have the one conversation, it's important to have the other one as well. And I think when we can really reach that equilibrium of we've got a lot of new jobs created or entrepreneurs that also creates more jobs, and we have skilled and experienced people coming together, then true transformation can also take place. And I think we should always see the big picture of how it all links together and how important having the correct data and the correct information to contribute to these things and how important it is. And for everybody, as I mentioned it earlier, is there's so much information available today, and it's coming from us at all sites. And due to technology, we are accessible 24/7. And it happens often that there's so much information out there that sometimes the information slips through the cracks, or we end up with having different versions of information. That's why forums like these, which is pretty competitive, where you can all sit on one forum and we get the information and it's explained to us, and we can have ways of interpreting it and having sure that the correct information, that we're all on the same page, is out there, and how we move forward with that. So those would just be my closing comments. Is I think great first step. Thank you to everybody, and we really appreciate the time and effort and the additional knowledge that we've gained today. Thank you.
There is another comment or question here from Sabelo Zuma, one of the recommendations relates to the need for adult basic education and training. And given the remoteness of our operations and the lack of infrastructure, are there any thoughts on how we navigate that?
Sandokazi is having some connectivity issues. But one suggestion could be looking at some videos. I know remoteness could be it is a bit challenging getting to places to do that's delivering education and training programs. But one way that helps me to learn is to look at videos. So that could be a suggestion. But yeah, I don't know, Olga, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, what I've seen happen in some of the different sectors is that a lot of companies are working together to put sensors up with the technology there in order to actually have the community members go to these sensors and then have someone actually give them their lectures or give them education and training online for them. The challenge again as well is people breaking in and stealing these types of computers and things. These are the challenges we face with every day in South Africa. But it's definitely we need to find ways in actually reaching the more rural communities and how to uplift them and how to work with them and able to, to get them better education. At the moment, we've got such gaps in our basic education landscape and moving forward. And it's something we see across the board. It's not just about this, it's all over the board. There's such a quality issue at the moment. And it stems from maths and science. And it doesn't just start with high school or higher education. It starts at a very basic level. So you cannot take someone who's been passed through the system over and over, and then suddenly they reach matric. And now they have to go and higher study or go for further studies, but they don't have those basic blocks that they needed years ago. So it's one of the things that we will also focus on, because I think before we talk about any further discussions, the biggest discussion at the moment should be maths and science, those core subjects, and how to really get those fundamentals set in place and for people to actually understand and to help the youth. Because I think if we all think back when we were younger in school, most of us, we just did our stuff so we can pass so we don't get in don't get in trouble with our parents. But the youth today is, if you've got a pass rate where it says that you've got 30% pass, you need 30% in maths to pass, but to study further you need 50% plus, or to find employment you need 50% plus. There's a big disconnect and a big gap between basic education, higher education, and industry itself. And it's a conversation that needs to be had on how the best approach for this will be. So I hope that just shines some lights on some of those comments.
Thanks, Olga. Yeah, I think you've covered that very well. And we all know. So I thank Thandakazi for her and the team for their insight and all the work they've done. I'm sure this is no small feat. They've done very well in terms of providing our industry with some exceptionally rich data, and I'm sure we can use it going forward in terms of implementing, and obviously how do we align it with the Forestry Sector Master Plan. So yeah, thank you to Olga and for also driving this and for driving the Forestry Value Chain Forum. All right, so thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.